Hey guys, Tarke here, and I thought I'd just do a little retrospective of Scourge League and talk about how I went from this opinion of Scourge to only 10 challenges completed. My initial impressions of Scourge League, I think, is the highest of any league since ExileCon. Scourge League had the potential to be my favorite league of all time. There's a lot I really loved about Scourge League, yet it is my least played league, definitely since ExileCon, but possibly also of all time. So how did that happen? It is worth mentioning that obviously Scourge is somewhat tarnished by everything that came before it with 315. But I think that is also a big reason as to why I lost interest with Scourge League so quickly. So with 315, we saw very dramatic nerfs. There was obviously all the outcry that came about of it. We had the month of Chris Wilson interviews. There were all of these promises for what's going to happen with the direction of the game, communication. We make our best work when we talk to the player base. Paraphrasing, that was the gist of it. And then we saw a really exciting new patch. We saw complete changing to how the passive skill tree functions, really positive aura changes, and a very difficult league. I've always been someone who really enjoys very difficult leagues. I was a big fan of Launch Delirium. I was a big fan of Launch Syndicate. I like those leagues. It caters to me as a player. So we had a really positive sentiment, for me anyway, towards GGG. We had a very positive, I had a very positive viewpoint of the patch. They'd made the Atlas less grindy. It just seemed like a home run. Like, there was, everywhere I looked at Scourge League, I'm like, this is a league I'm going to adore. This is easily going to be my most played league of the year. This is it. We're good. And then I only got 10 challenges. So, while I was a big fan of the super deadly nature of Scourge initially, it very much was overtuned, and when it did get nerfed down, I'm like, yes, this is a positive change. Still very deadly when you push it up to the very high Scourge count, like the 200 plus stacks, whatever. So it still had a deadly nature to it, just wasn't as silly, especially with like some of the random one shot from like the Arc monsters, etc. Had some interesting bosses when you saw them. And yeah, still had that challenge. Okay, good. I liked the initial iteration of Scourge maps, minus the Scourge map modifiers that just weren't fun to play, ones that forced you in and out of Scourge constantly, which often just led to lots of waiting around and lots of downtime. No one enjoys that. I think one thing with the Scourge maps and with Scourge generally that was a annoyance from day one all the way through was how it changed the way you ran through maps. It wasn't so much like this idea of backtracking constantly, but it made me very acutely aware of, it felt quite oppressive in the way in which I mapped, if that makes sense. So rather than just being like, okay, this is the map layout, and I clear through it in a figure of 8 or a circle or whatever, so I kill the mobs, I'm now suddenly being very aware of, okay, so I need to clear it in one direction, then I need to enter the Scourge verse, and then clear it in a certain direction. I'm going to be playing builds with a certain amount of movement speed, otherwise it feels bad. And that aspect of it was a slight... Ugh. That was really my main kind of annoyance with the core Scourge gameplay anyway. As for the reward system, before the league even came out, if you go back and you watch my like initial Scourge preview, I said the league's going to really suffer from delayed feedback. Every time we've had a league with delayed feedback rewards, players haven't been happy with it. And it seems like GG was aware of that because they made Scourge maps exceptionally rewarding, even in that initial first iteration of the league. They ended up doubling down on that reward, and they just made Scourge maps some of the most rewarding content we've ever had. But it's still just a very delayed league. In terms of you put your item in, you charge up for X many maps, you get something out, a lot of the time isn't what you want. And even if the rewards were always very, very positive, like even if the rewards were only positive, there was no downside, I think there still would have been a significant portion of the player base who wouldn't like just the delayed aspect of it. Delayed rewards are very difficult. You need to have a really big carrot on the stick to stay motivated. At least I do anyway. It's kind of like the equivalent of, you know, going to the gym every single day for months and months and months and months and months. and then you don't see any results, and then you see a cake, and you're like, I want to eat that cake, and you know you shouldn't be eating the cake, you should be, you know, being exercised and being whatever, but the cake is the initial feedback, and the 6-pack or whatever, that's like a year away. You eat the cake. You fall off the wagon. Basically, that's kind of just what happened with Scourge. Everything just seems so drawn out in terms of its reward structure. There wasn't really any big motivations to play on that level. While the Atlas had been shrunked, which was good, which meant we got to the endgame stuff sooner, which is good, it wasn't anything I hadn't already done before, so there wasn't really the drive there, and I wasn't really that motivated by... While I enjoyed the gameplay, while I enjoyed the danger, I also found it irritating to run with the whole like map thing and the shifting in and out and certain map modifiers being irritating. Conversely, I was actually quite a big fan of Ultimatum League, which I know wasn't a very popular league and a lot of people got bored of because it's like you're just sitting in a circle just running around, but there was no barrier to entry to Ultimatum. Even if you weren't the biggest fan of the gameplay, it didn't really mess up how you mapped. And it was a situation of you're in the area, you're running through, you're making some choices, which keeps it kind of interesting. The choices could have been a lot more interesting, and that's something I hope they improve when they reintroduce Ultimatum back into the game. I'm actually very excited for Ultimatum to come back into the game. But yeah, comparing it to Scourge League, I think it did a much better thing in just the pure gameplay. The main thing, though, which really kind of killed any and all drive I had for this league, was just the way that GGG handled it. I was really, really disappointed going from 315 and this idea of we're going to be really proactive, we're going to be making changes, we're going to be positive, we're going to be doing this, doing that, to then Scourge League, the league just being straight up abandoned. We initially saw no changes. We did get a post saying this is kind of what we might do. Then the next day, they're like, okay, bunch of changes to some difficulty tuning and how the maps work. Okay, cool. And me, as long as many other people, like, okay, let's see what they do to Krangling. Let's see if there's anything they do to the gameplay outside of Scourge maps. Mostly, let's just see what they do to the whole reward structure. And generally, this is something I do a lot now that I don't stream Path of Exile every single day. Obviously, when you stream Path of Exile every single day, you just play Path of Exile every single day. If you're in the situation that I'm in now, where I just really do Path of Exile on YouTube, it doesn't matter if I play less, as long as I'm still hitting my uploads. Or maybe I won't play very much for the next 2 days, but then I'll make up for it later in the week. And that's kind of just what happened there. I was like, well, there's no need for me to play right now, because at some point in the next week, they'll do something to the league to make it more interesting to play. So I'll just take a break for a little bit. So I took a break for a little bit, and then nothing happened. And I'm like, okay, it's fine. They'll do something later. Let's do an SSF reset. Let's motivate, you know, some drive. Let's get some ambition and let's set some goals. I do my resets. Nothing's happening. And then I'm like, I don't think they're really going to do anything, are they? And it's like, they're probably not going to do anything. It's been too long now. And I said this in Bay Class. I think it was a bit harsh, but it's kind of true. For me, if I feel like GGG doesn't care about the state of a league, then why should I? And that sounds very harsh, but hear me out. I'm excited for 317. 317 will be cool, this big endgame thing. If it seems like all their attention is on that, and Scourge is just kind of whatever, then why should I just keep playing it? There's no need to. As someone who will always play Path of Exile every single league, there's no need for me to play a league that is just fine. Like, does that make sense? And it's something that I've realized a lot now that I don't stream Path of Exile anymore. Because when you just stream Path of Exile every single day, then it doesn't matter. You just do it every single day. But when you play it more like just a normal gamer who just plays for the sake of fun, the difference being I report on stuff and when a new league comes out, I'm making videos. But like, I play it much more like just a normal person now. There really is no need to be on the treadmill just for the sake of being on the treadmill. So really, why is Scourge my least played league, despite the fact that Scourge had the potential and very much still could be my favorite league if they ever did anything to it. Maybe if they do anything with how it's reintroduced in the game. If it is, I don't think it will go core. But it just apathy, I would say, really. And I would say that a lot of that apathy is from the way that GGG handled the updates. I've said this, I know a lot of people disagreed with me, but for me, I probably would have played more if they'd said early on, this is it, like we're not doing any more changes, because then I wouldn't have expected them. For me, that's when the apathy really crept in. It was every time there was a news post with no news about the league mechanic, instead of seeing that news post and being like, ooh, yay, concept art, I'd be like, oh, that's not what I want to see. And then the next day would come by and they'd be like, oh, we've done this thing. And I'm like, oh, that's actually nothing to do with the actual league that we're playing right now. Okay. Next day, oh, we've done this. And it's like, and yeah, it was literally, it got to a point where like every single day where I'd get like a tweet notification about some random community event or whatever, it would just be another like reminder, we're not doing anything to Scourge League. And yeah. So, with that kind of out of the way, what are we going to do now? Because Scourge League has been extended because 3.17 has been delayed into February. Hey, I'm probably just going to be playing a lot of Battle Brothers. I'll be doing a lot of Battle Brothers content. I've got a couple of other indies. Inscription is one of them that I want to do some stuff of. I have been streaming on my Twitch. So if you follow me on Twitter, I tweet whenever I post a YouTube video. I also tweet whenever I stream. And there'll be lots of side content there. As we get Path of Exile news, as always, I will, do my bit on it. Likewise with Bay Class and everything. Very, very, very interested to see what the endgame change is going to be in 3.17. We know that 3.17 is endgame focused, but we have no idea what they're doing. Is it just a set of new bosses? Like, are they just cycling out Serious and putting new bosses in? Are they changing the way that Atlas works, akin to like how they added Shaper and Elder influence? Are they doing something more significant to the way that mapping works? I imagine whatever it is they're working on must be pretty substantial, considering that they dropped Scourge so quickly because they were very busy working on 3.17, and now they have extended Scourge League for more 3.17 development, so it implies that whatever it is massive. Don't know. I do hope that we do see an expansion of the mastery system. I think the passive masteries, a lot of them were quite lackluster, and while I think it's a very interesting system, and some builds got a lot of excitement out of them, a lot of other builds kind of just was like, meh. But I do really like I do like passive tree masteries as a system. I'm hoping we see some more changes to utility skill gems. We were told there would be more changes to utility skill gems to make them more interesting. I'm still very hopeful for 3.17. I'm still very positive about Path of Exile. I still think 3.16 was a step in the right direction. If it seems like this was a very negative video, it just kind of feels like, and I've said this before, as we are slowly moving towards Path of Exile 2, we're in a very transitional stage where it's just kind of like, do you really need to sink like 500 hours into every small incremental stage? Not really. I feel like a much healthier way to approach Path of Exile currently is kind of how you would approach an early access game. I kind of feel like PoE's kind of reverted a little bit in that sense, where it's kind of like, oh, they've done something new, you come, you check it out for a bit, and you're like, okay, cool. And now you're waiting for launch. That's kind of how I feel about Path of Exile now. I'm kind of just feeling like I'm waiting for PoE to launch. When there's a new league, I'll check it out. If the gameplay is cool, I'll stick around for longer. If it's kind of just whatever, I play it for like a month. I don't know. I'm curious to see what you guys think. Specifically on that last comment, and also, just how would you rate Scourge? How would you rate this last year of Path of Exile? I'm Tarke. Have a good day. Bye-bye.